Just getting organized here. All right. Things looking good. And we are live. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Much appreciated, as always, as per usual, on the go in a new spot that I'm usually not, or I've done this a couple times in this spot, but just on the go right now. That's where I'm at in my life, and just doing a lot of different things, going a lot of different places, learning a lot of different stuff. That is for sure. So today's stream, I'm gonna definitely talk about, my favorite stock is GameStop, but I also want to just talk about, the economy as a whole, stock markets as a whole, and I'm gonna present some information, but I'm not trying to fearmonger like, oh, it's all the end of the world, right? But there's some alarming things, but I'll let you do what you want with said information, right? As we kind of get into it here. But for a couple reminders. One, the GameStop wallet. Due to regulatory uncertainty of the crypto space, GameStop has decided to remove its iOS and Chrome extension wallets from the market on November 1st, 2023. So just make sure, you go ahead and get your secret passphrase and you actually import it to another wallet. If you look it up, it's pretty simple to do. Pretty much just make sure you have all the password, the keywords, and then you also need to use an export key, right? So not going to get into all that, but just remember, they are discontinuing operations of the wallet. But with that in mind, I do want to touch on the fact that GameStop Player is coming. When exactly, I couldn't tell you. I'm hoping for by the end of the year. It's the final quarter of the year now, right? Or technically not for GameStop. Their Q4 is November, December, January. So when I say final quarter of the year, I mean the last portion of the year. And it would be nice to see it launched prior to year's end. And I don't have the tablet today, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat on the side here on my phone. Not the best, but it'll have to do for today. Heyo, Fresh Maker. Thanks for being here. Hope you're doing well, man. Good evening, Vinny. Hope you're doing well as well. But yeah, we're going to try and keep it short and sweet today. And just keep sticking to the meat and potatoes because I feel like that's the best course of action for my streaming as a whole in the long term. And, I apologize. I haven't been doing as much as active, just trying to rebalance a lot of different things in my life, but no excuses. Everybody's busy. Everyone's got a lot going on. And I think I've been maybe thinking a little bit too hard about like, oh, I have to do this or do that in a certain type of way. And the best thing is I can just go, right? And just keep executing and figuring things out over time instead of so much overthinking and over planning type of deal. So again, wallet is going away soon, so do keep that in mind. Player launching in the near future. And something I want to quickly touch on is the debt, right? So to me, this is an ongoing issue, and it's talked about here and there, but it's not talked about as much as I would think, or like it seems like quite the problem to me, right? So if you look at how fast just recently it started going up, all of a sudden now we're at $33.6 trillion by tomorrow if it raises this same 55, sorry, this is like $58 billion just overnight, which is just insane to think about. We're at 33.6. So if we just continue to, move into more wars and just print more capital and just distribute, spend, right? And then now we also have student loans starting to begin to go back into repayment. And why that matters is theoretically that's going to hurt a lot of consumer spending, right? And I actually sent myself an article, but I misplaced it, or I was talking about it a little bit. I kind of wanted to read through it and react, but we'll do that for a different day. But even just looking back to, the end of May, we went from 31.4 to 33.6. I mean, by the end of the year, it seems like we're easily going to pass the $34 trillion mark. But, what you have to consider is information relative to this. So you have to look at GDP, how is GDP looking? And GDP is continuing to rise. But to me, the issue is the debt right now is still accumulating. And when you have a situation where interest rates are rising and spending is just as aggressive, you're just kicking the can down the line for larger interest payments to be made, especially when the 10-year is continuing to rise. You know, it's a question of how high it's going to go. That I couldn't tell you. But something I just want to stress, I absolutely love GameStop. That's the stock for me. That's what I personally believe in. But what you have to remember is you need to find your cup of tea, right? And if you're watching this, your cup of tea is fairly likely GameStop. Not necessarily everybody watching this, but appreciate you all regardless. But my point is, owning assets, in my eyes, is becoming increasingly important as this becomes an issue. And it's not just the United States. A lot of other countries are just excessively creating their currency, and just for so long, this has just been how things are, right? And now in a high interest rate environment and wartime, so to speak. I mean, I don't know if you want to call it that. I'm not even following everything that much. Like, I can't speak on all the craziness going on right now, right? But what I can say is war leads to, increased government spending historically. So if we're going to spend even more now, this debt is just going to go up more and inflation is going to follow, right? So with that being the case, the dollar is devaluing. So I think it's just becoming more and more important to own assets. And I tell people, GameStop's my cup of tea. I like S&P 500. I like the Bitcoin, and not that has to be the same for everybody. But what you have to understand is the dollar is being created aggressively. So debt is going to continue to accumulate, which means the value of cash in the long term is going to continue to fall and the price of goods is going to continue to go up. So it's becoming increasingly important in my eyes to own assets and just understand what's happening as a whole. And I'm not saying, it's like we're going to be in a situation necessarily next year where that same air conditioner you're going to buy that costs $1,000 is now $2,000, right? It might not be that dramatic, but if you save that $1,000 for like a 5-year span, that same air conditioner might be like $1,600 after those 5 years, right? Or maybe let's say, for sake of example, just goes from 1,000 to 2,000. It doubles in price, but your cash in that same time, if you just left it in like a high yield savings account, you're going to have significantly less, and that's just devaluing the dollar, like very generally speaking. So just something to keep in mind. And as interest rates are rising, what I had pulled up here, I was looking at Morgan Stanley's earnings a little bit. And even if you just love GameStop, I think it's good to look at what's going on in the landscape of things. And that's something I'm trying to do more and more because I absolutely love GameStop. And I'm absolutely, still feeling good about the company because I understand right now, sentiment might be a little bit negative. People are feeling a little bit doubtful about the company. But something I've long accepted is you truly don't know what's going to happen with the stock in the short term. So that's why it's, in my eyes, personally best to just keep a long-term viewpoint on whatever you're investing in, right? Because if not, then you're more so in it for a trade, and anything can happen in the short term. And there's this negative price action lately, and it's easy to be loud when you're correct. So anybody that's a GameStop bear, right? They're, oh, look at this, you idiots! 52-week low, like everybody knows that, and blah blah blah. Okay, but if you look at the most recent earnings report, still showed improvement. Since then, Ryan Cohen's officially in at CEO. There's been no business updates or anything that's taken place to reflect the price action. So to me, when I'm focused on the underlying company in itself, and by the way, this is the most recent report, the Q2 filing, which I do want to touch on a little bit later. But when you look at the most recent report, they're near that net profitability, right? And that's really the key factor I think they're focused on. And I do think for the full year 2023, they're going to be net profitable with a strong Q4. And I think for 2024 as a whole, I'd like to see them profitable every quarter. I'm not going to go ahead and like lock in the prediction that that's definitely going to happen at this point. But I think it's very likely if they continue to control their SG&A and just expenses across the board and how they operate across the board, it's very possible for them to be profitable very consistently from 2024 and beyond. Of course, there's going to be challenges ahead. We're going to see what player brings. We're going to see, do we get more stores similar to the Milan, Italy store? Do we get more products like this? If you look this up, this is a GameStop branded product. So I'd like to see more stuff like this. I think using their brand name is so key. When there's tons of individuals that love the company for the fact, like for what it is, you can sell like branded shirts, more branded cups, right? Like all kinds of different things. So I'd like to see them do more things like I just showed you with the 2 terabyte hard drive. I think, creating your own products in house with the GameStop brand name is an excellent opportunity for them. But how that can be done in a way that's profitable and benefits the company, that's to be determined, right? That's something I would have to either research or, before I can say, oh yeah, they should do this, this, and that. I'm not just gonna say, oh yeah, it just can happen. I'm saying there has to be steps to take place. But when you have a strong management team in place, I have faith in them to execute on that opportunity if they do see it as the best course of action, right, for growing the business. But it seems like the main focus right now is player. I mean, I kind of thought we'd maybe see some more stores like Milan, Italy popping up here and there, but thus far, not really, right? But again, we'll continue to see what comes. And again, the price action is not a reflection of, oh, there's an earnings report that came out that was so terrible. It's just the market being the market, right? And the powers that be, or however you want to see it, right? It is what it is because it's not going to go bankrupt. And I think if shares went to $5, and when I say it's not going to go bankrupt, I think there's going to be a lot of signs you're going to start taking on debts before anything like that were to happen, right? So you would start to kind of see things taking place. I'd be like, what's going on here? When you look at the balance sheet, right, it was the most recent balance sheet, still looks strong to me. And when you're nearing profitability, that's going to be net income positive. So if you're net income positive, that's subsequently going to improve the balance sheet because it's going to increase the cash, right? I mean, obviously, it comes down to the cash flow statement. You got to be free cash flow positive, but generally speaking, right? So here's the balance sheet since I'm scrolling all over. And as we move into a higher interest rate environment, if GameStop's just slightly turning a profit, they can continue to accumulate on their cash. And, going back to what I just kind of said before, how assets are becoming increasingly important, I think GameStop's aware of that. But when they acquire an asset, they want to be absolutely certain they're getting a good deal for it. And that even includes repurchasing their shares. Because a lot of people have said for a long time, why don't they repurchase shares? I think because anything could happen in the short term, and they want to be consistently profitable. But once you're consistently profitable, and the share price is this low at like 13-ish dollars, it's an incredible opportunity to repurchase shares. And it also, in a long-term, like zoomed out scale, you can see where the company actually was repurchasing shares through 2020. And then January 2021 obviously occurred. Everybody knows what happened there. And then in mid 2021, they issued shares. So they repurchased shares extremely low. They issued shares extremely high. And now, as things have just kind of gone like right, and kind of floating in no man's land, so to speak, where it's not really gone dramatically up and it's just kind of slowly bled down, right? But at the same time, you have ton of individuals that like the stock. You have improvement of financial metrics. You have complete shift in culture going on at the company. So with all of that taking place, and it's like, okay, well, we actually issued shares way up here, and now it's way down here. So you have all these different things that have taken place since then, and then share repurchases can begin to take place. So I think that's something that's on the horizon. I really want them to do dividends one day, but I don't think that's something that's happening until they're absolutely rocking and rolling, executing in multiple ways, and having growth consistently, and just consistently making things happen. I guess that's a very loose way to put it, and that's where dividends kind of start to come in. But share repurchase is probably more likely than dividends in the near term. And then also, I know there's the whole butterfly acquisition. I can't believe this is still a theory that's going on out there with the Bed Bath folks. But I'm not even going to say I told you so. I don't get anything by saying that, right? It is what it is. You made your own individual decision, and you wanted to. They're the loudest, right? We're all the same. It's all the same play, which is odd, right? That all these people that love Bed Bath & Beyond are like, oh, everybody that loves Bed Bath & Beyond has to love GameStop too. We're all together. We're all together. Stop fighting and all this and that. It's like, you do what you want. I'm going to do what I want. And someone commented on my thing once, like, you think you're not allowed to own 2 stocks? You are, but you shouldn't assert the fact that because you own 2 stocks, because maybe people just own one, that they have to own that second one too, right? Because it's a super triple mega quadra merger that's with a butterfly that nobody knows about, right? But that's kind of a whole tangent there. Let me hit the chat real quick. But those are some of my latest thoughts. Let's see. September, Tetron, GME is going to 10. September, thanks for being here. I wouldn't say it's impossible. I'd certainly be surprised. I'm not going to lie. I didn't think it would go that low. But hey, I'm not going to say it's impossible, right? Anything is certainly possible. Rants made investors not want to invest in GME with all his hate in his heart against other stocks. Rants is ruining GME movement. This is Tetron stream, not Morant's. GME stock prices walk down due to Morant's rants. I don't know about that, Blumpkin. That's a pretty bold statement, but I think, Morant's has got his own style. I understand not everybody wants to listen to what he has to say and possibly disagrees with him. I think he has some interesting information for sure. I absolutely say that. He's a friend of mine. I'll stand behind that. And again, you don't have to agree with everything he says. You don't have to consume his content, but I don't think you can say he's solely ruining like a movement, so to speak. Are you arguing that GameStop is an asset? NASCAR all out. I absolutely am. Bumpkin, are you here really that kind of impact? Compared, let's see, I lost 50K in BBY and I've lost 60K in GME. My entire life savings gone. It took me 40 years of working to save that much money. Damn, Brayton Wilson, I'm really sorry about the Bed Bath & Beyond with GameStop. I think if you're playing the long game, there's still an opportunity there, but, make your own financial decisions that are best for you. That's really what it all comes down to. Say, did you say your GME you're still holding? Giga? I'm absolutely still holding, no doubt about that. See, Brayton, you really lost all your money. Sorry to hear that. Yes, indeed. But yeah, it's about lessons. That's the thing for sure. I really do feel for people that have lost money. It's never fun to lose money, and I'm not trying to put myself on a high horse here and say like, oh, I know everything or like I've seen things, this and that, right? But what I'm about to say is like I've tried a lot of the get rich quick or like this is the next big thing or this is an opportunity that not a lot of people you got to get in before a lot of people know type of thing, right? And I feel like I've tried all the different things you hear about forex, day trading, swing trading, crypto trading, whatever it may be, right? And just aggressive options trading. And don't get me wrong, there's ways to make money trading, but what you have to realize is if you're not just investing for the long term, there's so many other factors at play. And also, there's so many booby traps out there. And that's why they generally say, or like it's generally said, that you might as well just invest in the S&P and not handpick individual stocks because it's extremely hard to beat the market. I used to think like, psh, yeah, whatever, I can beat the market, right? And I just thought about that statement's just for people who don't like really research investing or aren't getting too into investing. What I've realized is what that means is that there's so many other like such a plethora of information where you're going to if you're not really reading about stuff and super in depth about your investment, then you're going to have like things you miss, right? So to speak. So it's just really about like lesson learning and just being consistent and improving your investment skills over time. I mean, that's been my journey at least, and I've made a ton of mistakes along the way, but as a young individual I only had so much and whatnot, so that allowed me to gain like very valuable experience, and I'm blessed at my age to have the experience I do, whereas most people aren't haven't been messing with stocks and stuff since they're like 15 years old. And again, I'm not saying I was like this 15-year-old mastermind trader. I thought I was, but there's just a lot of like lessons to be learned. See, damn, chat's going wild. But yeah, so since chat's going wild, maybe we'll hit back there in a little bit. But let me get back to a couple points I wanted to make here. So where was it on this Morgan Stanley? So this is the 10K. But yeah, again, everybody's got to do what's best for them as an individual. I really think that's always important to consider, and just continue to learn. Whatever takes place in your life, just continue to just be like, okay, why did this happen? What can I do better? How can I avoid this? What do I need to become more knowledgeable about? Like if you just ask yourself the right questions and actually seek the answers, I feel like results follow. And when you don't do like the proper research and proper analysis, then you just kind of regret it later. You get frustrated, and I feel like I'm totally rambling today, but in terms of how the markets work and payment for order flow, the big banks, the institutions, brokerages, they all make money by you cycling money more and more and more, right? Because we have a fractional reserve system, which means the same dollar is loaned out again and again and again. So it's like I always reference the Wolf of Wall Street scene when Matthew McConaughey is showing Jordan Belfort what what's the name of the game where you're saying like you want to keep them in on the merry-go-round even if they make money the next play another stock you got to keep them going woo 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 it's a wazi it's a woozy it's a fugazi right that scene and it's true because it's like that's how Wall Street makes money people continuing to cycle their money in and even right looking at banks they're bringing in significantly less what is it investment banking income right yeah, see, investment banking is significantly down compared to the same period last year, right? And part of that is interest rates. It just doesn't make as much sense for a loan to take place because it's going to be at a higher interest rate, right? So, as a whole, this is what when they say, "Oh, the interest rates are rising and that's to slow the economy." That's what that means because it's less likely that you're going to make a return on your capital or you're taking on more risk with a higher interest rate than a lower interest rate, right? When we had it being common where you're getting loaned out like 2% interest on your loans. But let's see. Everyone should liquid until a major move happens. Sorry to hear that, Brandon, but hold zero debt. Why is GME your hill to die on stock? NASCAR all out? That's a great question, honestly. I think it is truly a unique opportunity. It's truly the most, in my opinion, the most misunderstood, unique investment opportunity that there is out there. It's just such a unique story, so many unique things going on. And I think the risk versus reward, which, I've evaluated for myself, and I really encourage everybody to do that the risk if somehow things don't work out at all, right? Company does go bankrupt in 5 years, something absolutely bizarre, right? Totally unforeseen, which again, I personally believe is absolutely not going to happen. I understand that what I have in versus what I could possibly earn if things do work out, as I personally believe they will. The risk versus reward for me is absolutely a good trade-off, and that's why I keep the long-term viewpoint where it's like if it's a long-term view, then it's ultimately going to be about the risk versus reward. And I think upside is much greater. And when you're not messing with options and all kinds of fancy things, you can only lose what you put in, right? And again, always got to do research before that. Let's see. Tetron, realistically, how long are you willing to stay in this ping pong algo with GME? Blumpkin, not another pretty decent question, but how long I plan to stay in, it's to be determined, right? I guess that's not a great answer, but I think everyone has to make their own individual decisions. That's always number one. And number two, if the company continues to succeed and they do eventually, initiate dividends, I just see an increasing amount of reasons to hold. There's just more reasons to like the stock. So it really comes down to them executing upon shareholder value initiatives for me in the long term. And let's go, baby. Ryan Sung, thanks for being here. What's up, Tetron? Fitzy, thanks for popping in. So, Tetron, enjoy your channel. Breaker Bale Trading, thank you so much. I appreciate all of you guys because, again, I'm just on my own journey, sharing my own story on what's happening to me and my viewpoints in investing. And I'm not here to say I'm always going to be right? Because nobody can be 100% right all the time. And I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. And I long said, with the Bed Bath crew, I was like, I really don't think this is going to happen, and I really think you guys love to bash me anytime I question anyway, like many others out there. But I'll admit I was wrong if there's this super butterfly mega merger or whatever that they talk about. But now the shares are disappearing, and yeah, I'm not even going to keep going into all that. Just a lot of strange things that happen out there, right? And lessons to be learned. We'll leave it at that. But to look at Morgan Stanley's investment banking year over year, to circle back, it was 34 and then 77. These reports are huge. And by the way, when you guys don't know something, like for when you're researching your investing, just copy and paste it into Bard or ChatGPT. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, AI, it's going to take over, or like, oh, I don't even want to use that. It's so stupid. I'm anti like Chat GPT. It's like, okay, that's fine, but like if you use it as a tool, like I use it as a grammar tool. Sometimes I'll paste an email in and be like grammar correct and improve, and then I'll just copy and paste it back. I look at it compared to my email, and it's just like my personal assistant. And when I don't know what something means, I'm like, give me a definition. Then it spits it out, right? Maybe the definition doesn't make sense based on what I'm reading. And then if that's the case, I'll be like, okay, explain it in terms of if I saw this term on a income statement. And then it gets more specific. Like you can kind of converse with it. So to me, it's a great research tool, right? It's great for understanding things. Like you wouldn't want to look up what was Morgan Stanley's revenue for the full year 2022. Information like that isn't accurate, like specific numbers, but for me, it's a good tool for just kind of researching things and comparing and just trying to understand things. Or yeah, not research, not comparing, more so like understanding and analyzing things. And then where was it? Investment income. Yeah, see, total investment banking was down 49%. Very large. And then shown more. And again, interest rates rose from 2021 to 2022, and things were just not as hot with the economy. So when you get like really hot and really cold, historically, it just seems like alarming to what could take place in the macro over the next couple of years, right? And again, I'm not trying to be like a mega doomsday, like, oh my God, it's the end of the world, because at the same time, GDP's still rising. A lot of other companies' earnings don't look too shabby, right, in some cases, but at the same time, there's like a lot of concerning factors. But I think that's also why, well, I was like the slowest way ever to do this, I'm sorry. But I think that's also why I have to just keep researching and paying attention as to what's going on, because things will always be ever changing. And for me, I'm watching this in particular every single day. The fiscaldata.treasury.gov, takes you to the exact data that's put out by the government, right? Like it's a government website. So the total debt outstanding, that's what I'm watching each day. And I want to know what the heck happened here, right? We went from 33.1 to 33.4 trillion, which doesn't sound like that much when you say it in trillions. But when you realize, like, oh, that was like almost $300 billion over one weekend. How did that happen? Like, I know that's right before everything that started in Israel that's going on happened, but I don't think it was officially talked about, at least till here. So you have to wonder, did it have to do with something with that? Could it be just a coincidence? And now we had a pretty significant overnight change from just Monday to Tuesday. This is $60 billion increase in debt outstanding. So we'll continue to see what happens with that number, but also historically, again, not trying to fearmonger, but historically, empires, right? I always go back to, it's funny, the meme about like the Roman Empire, but inflation was really what destroyed them, and it wasn't just like overnight, but over an elongated period. And I'm not saying it's the end of the world in like 20 years from now, but I'm just saying if there's never going to be any change, like lowering government spending and just making more responsible decisions, this is just going to snowball, 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 and what happens, right? I don't know. And then also, it seems like with this happening, what it's doing is it's just driving the classes apart. So it's getting harder and harder and harder to go from the lower class to the higher class, right? Or to the upper class. Not that it's ever been easy, but like it was maybe like this, like lower, lower middle, middle, middle upper, upper. But now I feel like it's gone like this, where it's like lower, lower middle, middle, this tiny little bit, upper middle, upper. Like the gap has widened very much so by a lot of things taking place. Again, I'm going on a total rant today, guys. I apologize. It's kind of just a ranty day for me. It's such a busy day at work, and just my brain is just like scrambled. But yeah, that's where my head's at. So that's where I'm looking at everything here. And then let's get back to 77 and investment banking. This is versus Q3 of last year, almost half the amount of activity. And then for comparison, you could see 2020, which was, a little bit of a funky year. So it'd be kind of nice to zoom out even more. And, I'm not showing you like Morgan Stanley, like, oh my gosh, this or oh my gosh, that. It's just the one I happened to look at today that I saw being talked about a little bit. I know it just came out. I think it was Monday night when they came out with the earnings. So that's something that's just interesting to keep an eye on. Their trading revenue is pretty consistent, and Morgan Stanley, absorbed E-Trade. The transaction took place a little while back, but it's actually just finalizing now. And then Schwab absorbed TD Ameritrade, and that's also just finalizing now, even though the acquisition was announced like a couple years back. So just again, looking back to like Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank situation, they just combine or they just get sucked up by a larger player, and it just makes the big dogs bigger, right? And it just kind of, again, not it's not exactly the same as the wealth classes, but it's just separating things more and more and more, right? Which is just it's crazy. It's just crazy seeing what's happening in real time, to be honest with you. Like I'm truly mind blown by it, and I'm trying to read more and more like historical information about the stock market. When I feel like when I've researched things happening in the market, and obviously you're always looking at what's happening now, and then more so like the past 5 years, I feel like I always look at like a 5 year span kind of what's happened with the company. I mean, not like you have to do like you're always going to stumble upon things, right? Of previous information, but I'm just saying I haven't like specifically studied like, oh, what was happening like in 2002 to 2004, like a really specific period like that. Like I've definitely researched, from 2000 to 2008, and it is also like, wow, that's a little weird. That's how things work now, and it's just at a much larger scale. And what you have to realize is if the same thing keeps happening every time where it's just like build up, build up, build up, build up of the economy, big crash. And then when the big crash happens, how do you get out of it? Print, 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 print. Build up, build up, build up, build up till like way higher than before. Like now we're way higher than 2008. And then big crash. And then you need an even larger scale bailout. And when you have a larger scale bailout, you have more money created. So it's like it's a vicious cycle, right? How that all goes down. And Peruvian Bull puts out a lot of information, and I'm definitely not the only one talking about this. But again, main point of tonight's stream is understanding, owning assets. Don't blindly just go into like, oh, I'm just gonna get these random assets. And Tetron said so, right? It's to the moon. Whatever he touches, I'll buy. No, I'm just kidding. But pretty much just information you want to be aware of, right? And just things I'm keeping an eye on. So I thought I'd share with you guys. But let me hit the chat. Ransfran said he's willing to stay 10, 20 years. Blumpkin, I believe it. Tetron, the reason why you're so calm despite the steep price decline is because you didn't over leverage yourself like I did. I invested my entire life savings in GME BBY, and I regret that. You're investing the right way, Tetron. I respect that. Brayton, I appreciate that comment, and I'm really sorry, about what you went through, and that is very unfortunate. And I do wish you all the best. And just really, just from here, you just got to do the best you can, do the most research you can, and just let it be the most valuable lesson to you. And I have great faith in you that you're going to have success in the future and good things to come. GME's so cheap. Love it. Connor D, me as well. I like the stock. Would you have foreseen GME going bankrupt 2008, 2009? You don't want GME to turn to GM. Yeah, it's an extra letter on that ticker, so it's GME. But yeah, no, that's an interesting comparison. I mean, again, anything could happen, but that's why I'm going to just keep on keeping on with everything going on. I don't think it involved with BBYQ, learn any type of lesson. Vinny, I mean, I think some did, some didn't, right? I think that's kind of like anything else. I'm in for 10 to 20 years. Connor, that's the long-term way. Okay, guys, so look over calls. Let's see, then Morantz loves making the goalpost for GME. Bumpkin, yeah, I see you're not a Morantz guy, but, it is what it is. Everyone's going to have different opinions, right? I think he just says things like in a certain type of way, and I'll be honest, I don't think things have happened as fast as I originally hoped for GameStop, but I think things continue to move in the right direction. But in the end, it's just money. It comes and goes. It's true, Freshmaker, yeah. And that's kind of a cool part about what GameStop's doing with the digital everything. Getting into digital assets, because I think that's going to become increasingly popular. And in my eyes, in terms of Web3, there's a lot to be determined in how it's actually going to function, because right, originally I think it was the idea of okay, it's going to be through NFTs. And I said for a while okay, I think NFTs are still going to be relevant, which I still do, but it's never going to be called an NFT. That name is stained forever with negativity, right? So because it's so negative now, it has to be looked at as a digital asset, digital collectible, whatever it may be. Maybe there'll be various names, right? And it has to be very simple for the user, where the average person is just doing it simultaneously with whatever it's for. So if it's an asset for a game and they're selling it to somebody else, and they can, boost their
platform wallet, right? Like maybe GameStop player is going to have a wallet within it, but not obviously not the GameStop wallet, but maybe it's going to be, I don't know. I don't know how exactly it could be, right? But what I'm trying to say is it has to be simple for the average person to just playing a game and like, oh, I have these digital assets. I can sell them and then use the money to buy a skin in a different game or a certain type of weapon in a different game. How did it even? I didn't even know you could do that. That's super dope. It needs to have that factor where people just talk, oh, you could just do that, and then they're actually using Web3 in the blockchain and they don't realize it. That's my viewpoint on that. How exactly that looks, I couldn't tell you. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm always kind of reading things and just trying to understand more with Web3. But I've honestly been reading about like Bitcoin and blockchain for a long time. And again, like I said, I've been reading about stuff since I was younger. But you have to realize my knowledge has evolved and how I've thought and who I am as an individual has evolved so much in that time. So I feel like I say that like, oh, I've been researching crypto for years, but I'm not saying like I'm an expert or, oh, I'm like very, very knowledgeable in the subject. And no, I'm saying like I've kept an eye on it and I'm trying to become very, very knowledgeable, of course. But in seeing how things have evolved with it as a whole, I feel like it really does, as it becomes more and more simple for the average person to have access for it. And I just think about Bitcoin with this, it just seems to become more and more relevant. And with the Bitcoin halving coming up, that's just another decline in uh, improvement rather between the difference of supply as the dollars being created more and more. There's a bit less Bitcoin then being created as a spot ETF comes to fruition, which it seems like it is, right? Sooner than later. That's also just more access for more people, and it's just kind of becoming globally recognized as an alternative asset class. And that's my viewpoint there, and blockchain's a part of that. Obviously, what GameStop's doing is not Bitcoin; it's not exactly the same, but I don't know. That's just some of my thoughts on that. Let's see, hello Tetron, Chad, thanks for popping in. Imagine player will have a wallet integrated. Giga, that would be amazing, and it has to be in some way, shape, or form that I think is simple. I really feel like that's the main thing. I'm 50% with GME, don't feel like buying more. Noah? My name is also Noah, I love it. But yeah, I mean, you got to do what's best for you, man. If that's where you feel comfortable, that's where you're at, I think that's where you got to be, right? Keep it simple. Someone explain to me in simplest terms what player is or simplest vision is supposed to be. Mouvier, thanks for being here. Very generally speaking, it's going to be a gaming platform. It's going to have streaming of some kind. I don't know if necessarily people like me will be able to stream, or it'll just be streams of events type of thing. That it's all this information I'm getting from the patent that's filed, and it says it's going to be the idea of digital assets on there. It's going to be new games, so I'm pretty sure it's mostly going to be games that are going to be new. So that's definitely going to take a long time to adapt, and it could be the kind of thing where it takes one big game for the platform to really take off, or they're possibly going to try and onboard with some other games. And how exactly all of that looks, that's where I got to get my hands a little dirtier and kind of do some more digging. But I'm definitely sure some people in the chat will hit you guys with some info. Does Tetron sell Theta or DRS shares? Vinny, I don't sell shares, but no. I do have one put option I've sold, and that's it. And I really don't normally make trades, and that's a long-term option, and that's one particular thing I do. And you might be thinking like, oh my God, that's crazy. Again, risk versus reward. So for me, I researched it a lot, I thought about it a lot, and I went ahead and took the position, right? And I don't want to say the exact number because I don't want people to be like, oh, that's the one Tetron says. But for me, I want to earn interest on my underlying cash and at the same time collect premium. Do you think GME will go over 40 euro a share? Noah, I think it'll go up a lot, but when exactly, I couldn't tell you. I'm not telling you to buy more GME, but the daily RSI doesn't stay long below 30. Yeah, Freshmaker, I'm sure all the indicators are showing like a major dip for GameStop, like just in terms of RSI, MACD, all that kinds of stuff. Just it's relative strength index, and again, I don't do too much TA, but yeah, we'll see what happens, right, in the short term, because that's the thing. No matter how much TA, I feel like anything can always happen in the short term. That's kind of my perspective there. Jay, hope you're doing well. Freshmaker, I noticed that too in today's article, daily RSI is under 30. No Spencer, say 400. Outside of player and balance sheet improvements, what other catalysts should we look for? Ryan Sung, good question. Honestly, I feel like more products GameStop branded, preferably digital products, not just like coffee cups. Although I think people would buy that too. But if they did more like drives and just general PC components, but maybe they need to make some kind of acquisition in order to make that happen, where they're making them in house. Because like people have floated the idea of Newegg. That'd be kind of cool if they rebranded Newegg to GameStop egg. I don't know. That'd be weird. But it'd have to be like maybe GameStop like PC, or maybe it would be GameStop player for the PC parts. Maybe that would be kind of cool if they were selling PC parts branded as GameStop player, or more stores like the Milan Italy store where it's kind of based around the experience. And what I really want to see them do, I don't know if this will necessarily happen, but if in GameStops, right, there's actually a QR code that you can scan and it gives you something on player. So it incentivizes you to go home and give the platform a try. And then maybe also there's something on player where it's like, okay, yeah, maybe I'm already on here, but I want to visit my local GameStop to scan this to get this, right? Which maybe it has to be something different than that, because obviously I guess someone could just take a picture and share it online. But if they could think of something like that, or maybe it's like a randomized QR code constantly. Like once you buy something, it's printed on your receipt, and then it's unique one of one, right? Maybe something like that could happen, which I think is vertically aligning the business, which would be very nice. Why do you think GME is the lowest it has been in a long time? Noah, honestly, personal opinion, if I'm betting against the company, right? I'm in the shoes of somebody that's betting against a particular company and it's on the brink of profitability, theoretically, you would want it to go lower the most you can to like push the most people out before it does turn profitable. And at the same time, that's the best side to take the other side of the trade. Then, if you're betting against it, like, okay, it's about to swing to profitability, things are about to turn around, then they go the long way. And just historically speaking, very generally speaking, Wall Street's always done that, right? They short the whole way down, and then they flip and go long. And I feel like that's kind of happened with Palantir. You saw it get just beat down for a long time, and all of a sudden now, they're like, oh, we're going to be consistently profitable. And oh, we're repurchasing a bunch of shares. Oh, contract. And the stock is moving positively, right? And it seems like a lot of big name funds were largely purchasing shares at that lower point. So it could be something like that. And at the same time, the market is always going to do what it does, right? It's always going to be just, you never truly know in the short term. I really feel that way. And again, that's my perspective since following stocks as long as I have, which again, I'm no expert, but that's always kind of how I viewed it. But Blumpkin needs to be removed. Yeah, Blumpkin has some interesting opinions, but it's all good right now. It's all good. And as long as nobody's bugging out too much. I know someone was here last time going crazy. I forgot what they were saying, but they were just going nuts. But all right, I'm going to get into GameStop more now that I've been ranting away. So I just briefly want to kind of look ahead to what Q3 might be, right? So this is the most recent balance sheet of almost 900 million in cash equivalents, marketable securities of about 300 million. So that's about almost 1.2 billion total rather. And when you look back to the same time of last year, it's a little bit lower in terms of the cash. So they actually have more in cash and marketable securities than this same time of last year for Q3 2022. So if they're free cash flow positive, ideally net income positive, that would be that would be very positive for overall cash. And just keeping a strong balance sheet, I think, is important, and I think they'll continue to do it. I don't see any sign of them making like a ridiculous decision, and I also think SG&A is going to continue to be lower. So I do have this chart here, which keep an eye on my Twitter if you guys don't follow me at Tetron Invest on Twitter, where I'm pretty much just trying to write some information out and put graphics up like this, and then use them on the stream also. But this is GameStop's SG&A, so this is just historical information. It's kind of always been like in the 30s, and really now for the first time in a long time since 2019. You have to go back to 2019 before if you want to see the last time it was below 30%, right? Or I'm sorry, actually the one quarter in 2021. But essentially, if you look at the percentage of revenue, SG&A does look to be trending lower. And on top of it, something that's going on in 2022 and 2023 for GameStop is they're actually doing immutable X token grants, or it was signed in Q1 of 2022, but it was outlined to be throughout 2022 and 2023 and a part of SG&A. So it's being factored into SG&A these 2 years. So it's declined from 2022 to 2023, and it's evenly split, right? Like about 1/8 generally, about 1/8, right? If you look at the exact information on the earnings report, and in having that, they're still able to decrease Q1 of from Q1 2022 to Q3 significantly for SG&A, down almost or literally over 100 million, which is just a huge increase or improvement rather. And then went from 387 million to 322 million. So that was a $50 million swing. This quarter, if we could see something similar, that would be great, I think, because also with the sale of some of the property and land in Ireland, pretty much, I think maybe not just Ireland, maybe a couple parts of Europe, but GameStop is actually going to take a one-time profit on that, so you should look for that in the upcoming quarter. And interest rates have risen slightly since the most previous quarter, so with that being the case, they'll also see more interest income. Let's see. It's GG for Schwartz when we have earnings in December. Yeah, Meagle, we'll see. Because if it is positive, right, it's just going to spur more positivity around the stock or just positive sentiment in general. Because historically speaking, Q4 is their strongest just with the holiday season. And if they are operating more efficiently, as they appear to be, and they continue to be that way in Q4, then they're going to have a net profit there. And that'll be enough to take them for full year profitability, even if Q3 is just about break even or a slight loss. 1381 was the ultimate bottom. The rocket's taking off and will leave all the naysayers behind. Vinny, it's possible. I'm saying it's possible, but it also could go lower, could go higher, could go up, down, left, right, sideways circles. We truly don't know. We'll have to see. Crushing earnings is the fastest way back to the $20. I agree, Ryan. I absolutely agree. How low do you think it go? Kind of what I just said, Noah. Up, down, left, right circles. We'll have to see. But yeah, I think, positive earnings, just improvement, and just doing the right things will improve the stock price over time. It could be significant jumps. It could be a steady climb. That's also the thing we don't know, right? Like it's been this kind of steady decline down, but it could be big jumps up. But it could also be a slow rise up. And even along the way of rising, whether rising or falling, there's always going to be ups or downs or like dramatic moves one way or the other. That'll kind of have you confused. Think go under €1? I don't know about that, Noah. That sounds absolutely nuts because you'd have a ton of people buying shares, and you also have to realize with GameStop having like $3 and they have $3.92 per share equivalent to their cash equivalents, and marketable securities. So they essentially have almost $4 a share in cash. So if the share price somehow goes down to like $5 or even probably like I would say when it gets to like 6 or 7, if that somehow happens, I think GameStop's absolutely going to go out and start repurchasing shares because they start to have almost as much per share in the actual market cap, or sorry, yeah, per share in cash per share in the price per share. So it's just like, okay, well, if they're near equivalent, we might as well just repurchase our own shares, and that'll just be a shareholder initiative. And if they continue to do the right things, that's just what all it comes down to, honestly. But I couldn't see it. I'm not saying I see it, but I'm just saying if things like that do happen. Below 10 would be a surprise for me. Me too, Freshmaker. Honestly, I would be surprised. I always thought, it could go a little bit lower. But now, like we're here. We're going to see what happens, right? That's what it comes down to, seeing what happens. I'm trying to always keep it real, honestly. But yeah, I'm trying to think of anything else I want to touch on. I'm just about to wrap it up here. I'm going to keep it night, like I said, short and sweet today. I'm trying to organize some things. I promise I got more and more coming soon. I got some write-ups I'm trying to work on. I got to get back on Twitter. Twitter's the war zone, but I'm ready to jump back in. It's quite the grind out there. So, I mean, it's quite the fun time, I should say. But yeah, I mean that was just the balance sheet, and then SG&A for last year, which I had over here, which I already kind of touched on. I'm just gonna touch back. Where did I get? Yeah, so 387.5 million, or 387.9 million. So can we see 320 again? Possibly, possibly. I mean, if we saw it for this quarter, I don't see why we can't see it for this quarter because they're continuously doing more and more to like improve margins. Like when I say continuously, I mean throughout 2023 they have thus far. So we're gonna see. I don't know. I think 320 seems pretty reasonable. And if you go up against their income from last year, if SG&A had been 320, then it would have been about 67 million better and or improved rather, and then that would be about 33 million their operating loss would have been. And now you have to consider their interest income for their high yield securities are going to be greater now this year versus last year. So we could see this number at like maybe like 14 million, something like that, and it's negative because it's interest income. Expense would be if they had more debt than actual income they were bringing in, or if they had paying more on their debt than income they were bringing in from those high income securities, which are mostly T-bills. And that would, if you use those numbers, right, if they can bring in 320 SG&A, this part, like the gross profit part, you just keep exactly the same, and you factor in SG&A at 320 this time, this number would be about 33 million, right? And then you factor in about let's say to keep it easy, 13 million of improved interest income. So that would leave you with a $20 million loss before income taxes. And then you could also consider about, I think it's about somewhere between 10 to 15 million for the sale of the property and whatnot in Europe for some of the wind down operations. So that would be like almost a net profit, right? Just about a break even. That's just, some very, very rough off the dome numbers, just speaking out loud, thinking out loud. And we'll have to see, right? Those are just some things to kind of consider what it could look like. But again, obviously revenue will be different. I don't think it'll come in exactly the same. Ideally, it'll come in a little bit higher, which I do think is possible. It seems like gaming's been hot this year. A lot of different things going on with it. A lot of reasons to go to GameStop. If you're interested in gaming, and then if they're managing cost of sales, if that's a little bit lower, that would be very, very ideal to see. But we'll have to see. Do you worry that it'll not blow up? Honestly, Noah, I think whatever's bound to happen is bound to happen, right? I think your definition of blow up, right, in terms of the stock, will be different than mine. It'll be different than his, hers, whomever. So, do I think it'll go up a lot? I personally do. I personally do. A matter of when, I truly couldn't tell you. Float will get locked very quick. Makes sense, Jay. I see what you're saying. Shorts will flip long and close if those processes well. Corporate $103 million buyback. Yeah, you're right, Jay. They do already have a $103 million buyback program like in place from a long time ago that they could theoretically use any time as far as I'm aware. But I think they'll vote to extend the repurchase of shares, or sorry, expand the share repurchase program or put a new one in place eventually where they'll be authorized to repurchase up to like 500 million in shares, right? Not that they'll do that all at once, but just to have that out there that like, okay, the stock's really low, we're going to repurchase shares if we think it's a fair value to do that and it makes sense for our operations. What do you think about IMX Passport and how it will impact player, if at all? Giga, it could be involved. I have to do more research on it. I'm only slightly familiar with it, but it seems like it has that simplicity to it, which I do think is really important for getting people involved in Web3 gaming and it evolving in itself. And I've shown this previously, I have to find it exactly again, and I'm trying to do a better job of keeping paper trails for myself where I'm like, oh, that thing I just thought of, I want to be able to look at that again. Like I found that Take-Two and Microsoft have put out some like filings, right? Some patent filings for some Web3 type of stuff in terms of gaming. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, it's ginormous already. Like I'm saying it's a sure shot. I'm saying there's other players that are trying to get involved in this, right? So I think GameStop's trying to be at the forefront of it, and that's their opportunity with it. But if they keep doing the things like creating GameStop branded products and improving the stores to be like Milan, Italy type of stores in like large locations, like city locations type of thing, then the opportunity's there, right? Like that's where I see the opportunity at right now. Noah, do you have faith in Jesus when you never met him the same way? Brayton, uh, yeah, I mean, I'm not too religious, but I feel like when you have faith in something, like you have faith. But I mean, I think that's a very different type of situation. That's the point. Everyone keeps buying, and the flow is getting smaller. Just write it out. That's right, Britton. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, no, I'm glad everyone's getting along in the chat pretty good today. But I think I'm just about to wrap it up here. Yeah, we're gonna just keep grinding. And when I say we, I mean me in terms of what I'm doing. You know, everyone's out there making their own decisions, but I keep encourage you to keep grinding too, right? Whatever it is you're working on, like just keep going with it. Because I realized like I took like last week off, like you guys probably saw, I didn't really put out as much stuff. And I was like, I don't know. I thought I would feel like refreshed and like I need like time off for my brain and also my job's been busy and like other stuff in my life, so I'm not like being a complete bum. But I was like, I'll just take some time off from like what I'm doing online. But I'm like, nah, like I felt like something was off. It didn't even feel right. So it's about grinding forwards. That's really what it's about. And it's kind of the same with GameStop, right? In a funny way, I keep relating it to GameStop, myself to GameStop, because I'm like, GameStop's on the grind, going brick by brick, improving things. And it's like, same here. That's what I'm trying to do as like a human, though. And they're doing it as a business. They're doing it with an EIN. I'm doing it with an SSN type of thing. Improved earnings is truly the key to all of the answers. Great stream again, Noah. Thank you, Ryan. And yeah, exactly. It's always this journey of, I feel like, learning for a lot of individuals where maybe you thought something big was going to happen quick and it's turned into perspective of how to invest. And that's definitely been a journey for me where I'm like, wow, I'm really, really researching something and truly understanding it and just understanding markets as a whole as well. That's something I've learned so much about. Just understanding what the DTC is, the ACAT system, even just like how a wire works, like alternative assets, such as like private equity, all these different things, like so many fascinating things I've learned. And that's why I kind of am doing this channel, just sharing what I'm learning over time. And I love when you guys share stuff with me. So just be in touch. Appreciate you guys and have a good night.